Now we're live. So, hi there, folks, and got another great interview at WordCampUSA 2022. I've got James. James, would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers and
Sure.
listeners?
Hi, everyone. My name is James Giroux, and I am the Director of Brand and Product Marketing over at StellarWP.
Oh, right. So, James, can you give a quick outline of what your tasks are at StellarWP?
My tasks,
And your background, where you come from?
Yeah, so I have been in the WordPress ecosystem for about 10 years. I started as agency owner doing freelance work, things like that. And then I ended up working for a theme company for a little while called PageLines back in the day. From there, I ended up at Envato, working at Envato for 3 or 4 years. Then most recently was at Gravity Forms, and now I'm here at Stellar. So I've done the 4 bases of WordPress life. I've worked for a hosting company, worked for a plugin company, I've worked for a theme company, and now I'm working for, and I've worked for a marketplace. So those are the big 4 as far as I know.
And you're Canadian, aren't you?
I'm Canadian, yeah. And my day-to-day as Director of Brand and Product Marketing is really, it's sort of a jack of all, master of none kind of thing. At Stellar, we have 8 different brands, 8 different products that are part of the Stellarverse. And I operate in the Stellar part, so sort of sitting outside of any of the individual brands, but operating a little bit of some of the bench strength.
We had a chat with one of your colleagues.
Oh, you did? Oh, good.
Devin,
yeah, Devin's a
he's
great
a friend of mine.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I hate him because he's got star looks. He's young, good looking.
Yeah, got the builds.
I
Really
just hate the bugger, really.
tall,
good looking, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's terrible, isn't it? I hate him.
Yeah. And then there's me, poor old me.
Well, it could be worse. It could be me.
Oh.
There you go. No, he's a bit of a star, isn't he? The ladies love him, don't they?
You know, he is very kind. He's very thoughtful. I've had the privilege of knowing him for a number of years, and even though we've been on opposite sides of some conversations for a while, one of the really neat things about Devin is, and Matt and the whole Give team is, just, it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. They're willing to engage with you. They're willing to connect. And, you know, often I would end up at events where I was the only one there from Envato, right? And they always made an effort to include me and make me feel welcome and get me involved in things. So when the opportunity came to work at Stellar and hang out with them where we're all on the same team, that was a really neat thing. I can remember the first couple of messages I got when I showed up randomly on Slack where, oh, you're here. This is awesome. So, yeah, it was really great.
You mentioned Envato.
Yep.
A massive player in the WordPress space for a number of years with Theme Forest.
Yep.
A massive part, but slightly outside.
Yeah.
The part of it, but not part of it. Based in Australia.
Yep.
You know, one of the biggest markets, one of the biggest drivers probably of the adoption of WordPress.
Yep.
That was outside of automatic, seen as part of it, but not part of it, if you understand.
Yep.
What's your own reflections about all that?
I was talking to somebody the other day, and, you know, it's the... I think that there was a missed opportunity there on the part of the WordPress ecosystem and community, and Envato stepped in to fill a void that was there. I don't think we would have WordPress at the level it's at if we had not had Envato doing what it did. Its ability to help end users connect with solutions to their problems was something nobody else was doing at a level that it needed to be. And so their ability to kind of make that happen was great. And another thing I think that a lot of people don't realize, or that I guess I believe, is the role that Envato had in internationalizing WordPress. because so many of WordPress's developer or Envato's theme authors are based outside of the English-speaking world. And so their passion for creating products that they could sell helped to spread WordPress around the world, as well as being a way to lift a lot of people into financial success and financial freedom that, again, helped to further the economy of WordPress in ways that I don't think it could have done on its own. So I reflect on that, and I reflect on Envato's impact on WordPress in general. I think we owe a lot to that. Obviously, there's some challenges there, some philosophical decisions around.
Well, the great leaders, I call him.
Yeah.
My English.
Yeah, the
sarcasm.
great leaders. Yeah.
He had a few spats with them, didn't he?
It was. I think spat is the wrong word, because there's actually a lot of respect and appreciation both between Collis, the founder of Envato, and Matt over at WordPress and Automatic. And in fact, they've spoken regularly over the years. And one of the things that people think is that because Matt has chosen the GPL as a hill to die on, and WordPress has made it, or Envato has made a different decision about that. That there's bad blood. There's no bad blood, right? There's mutual respect. There's agreement, I think, at the top that Envato has played a pretty instrumental role in the growth of WordPress, and I think, if the reality is they both just accepted that that's the hill that WordPress is going to die on, that GPL licensing thing, and Envato is just not there. Right? And Envato, it's not that Envato isn't there, it's that Envato has decided not to make a decision on that, to create an option for theme authors and theme creators and plugin creators to decide whether they want to opt into full GPL or if they want to do a split license. And, it's a philosophical conversation. I'm not a legal expert, so I don't really get involved in any of that stuff. But the consequences were felt by me and by a lot of us who work at Envato. I was never allowed to speak at a conference. I couldn't organize. I couldn't participate in that way. I could attend, but I have to say that even though I was not able to participate, I was always welcomed in. Right? I can remember sitting in Vienna having conversations with Josefa and the WordPress community team, all gathering around me and being willing to listen, being willing to hear me out and talk about how we can still participate together despite that block in the way. And that was really special. And it's neat now because I all of a sudden find myself on the other side of my experience at Envato with permission to speak and permission to organize and participate. And now I'm like, what do I do? How do I get involved? Well, freedom, but also, encountering a completely different issue, which is one of privilege and diversity, where I'm a white male and I have the privilege of having had access to the higher echelons of WordPress for so long because of my roles at different companies, and going, yes, I could apply to speak and I could apply to organize, but do I need to, or should I be stepping back and allowing somebody else from an underrepresented community to actually get involved? We already have a lot of organized like events and WordCamps that are hungry for more diversity. So me throwing my hat in the ring to be another presenter to do that probably doesn't help with that mix. But
so what do you see as one or two of the biggest challenges in the next 6 months to a year that WordPress faces? And what would, if you can reflect on maybe one or two, what would, in your own thoughts, would be the way that those challenges could be overcome?
I think one of the things that's one of the biggest challenges we're facing is the reckoning around being remote, the remote reckoning, if you will. So many WordPress companies, both small and large, have been fully remote before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and I think there's a remote exhaustion and a remote challenge and disengagement. We've heard a lot about quiet quitting in the last couple of weeks and employee disengagement. And because a lot of WordPress companies are so small, they don't have the tools to help their employees stay engaged and be engaged. And so I think a real challenge we're going to see as we come out of the pandemic is how smaller WordPress organizations and smaller WordPress companies are going to navigate some of these employee challenges and these team challenges. I think there's a real opportunity for us as a community to be pooling together our collective understanding. Companies like Liquid Web or Stellar, where we've got over 600 employees, and GoDaddy and other places where we've got these well-established cultures and teams that think about organizational development and employee engagement, to be able to jump in and provide some resourcing to the smaller companies so that we're not losing people who are just quitting and leaving WordPress entirely. So I think that's one challenge. And on the back of that, I think it also speaks to the challenge we have in WordPress around contributing. And, as people are exhausted with work and people are exhausted with some of the challenges of WP drama and things like that, they're disengaging from contributing. And we're not creating really helpful and easy ways for people to contribute. It's not accessible, right? And I don't mean in the accessibility sense of the word. I mean, WordPress contributing is not accessible to the vast majority of people because it's really hard. WordPress as a product, is much more complex than it was 5-10 years ago, but our systems for bringing in contributors are still 5, 10, 15 years old. They're still the same systems we had before. So we, I think, need to actually have a rethink about what contributing looks like, what rewarding contributing looks like, who contributes, and I think it's a challenge that the foundation recognizes. And I've got a lot of faith in Josefa and her team and her ability to solve those problems. Yeah, but
a few weeks ago,
yeah.
I had a live chat with
Yeah.
Chloe, the chief
All right, yeah.
I love Chloe.
Yeah, she's great.
Chloe.
Chief of staff, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she's brilliant.
Yeah, she's very impressive lady.
Yeah.
She dealt with me so easily.
Oh, she figured out how to work with you, did she?
Charmed me.
Oh,
Said nice things to me.
She's just really lovely. She's really lovely. Yeah.
One of the other factors, and I'd be interested in, is how things. And I gather with my conversations from some of the leading people in Automatic about, you just touched on it, being able to contribute to the WordPress community, and that they seem very concerned about a perceptive decline in contribution, and they seem to link that to, and I might be wrong here, COVID and the lack of WordCamps.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure there's an aspect to it, but I also agree with you is that I think they're overestimating that, and I think some of the things that you've just touched on are also, it's just got more difficult, and a lot of people just given up because of the difficulty. There needs to be more processes, easier ways of contributing.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's like I said, we're relying on 10 to 15-year-old systems, right? The WordPress has grown organically, right? And our systems have grown organically as a result of that. We're no longer the small sort of bootstrappy organization and network of creators that we were 10 or 15 years ago. So it's almost like you've got to sort of go, okay, knowing what we know now, if we were to hit a hard reset on how contributing works, what might that look like? What does the conversation look like there? How do we help people first? How do we first identify prospective contributors? What does that look like? What are the systems in place to do that? And then once we've done that, how do we help move them from the outside to the inside, right? And what are we doing that way to do it? In community theory and community engagement, we talk a lot about the cycle and how that works of moving people from outsider to insider. And we've relied on systems like meetups and WordCamps to do that. Well, we live in a kind of post-meetup world right now, still. So what does that look like? Can we develop other approaches to doing that? What does recruitment look like? Now that we're remote first and trying to sort that out. We've got lots of freedom, right, and flexibility because of that. But I think our systems are still playing catch up.
Now, another thing, I just want to see if you want to comment on this. Another thing that quite a few people have spoken to me in private and also touched upon, which I put to Chloe yesterday as well, is governance.
Governance, yeah.
Now, I'm not making any assertion that Automatic or the foundation in any shape or form are run inappropriately.
Yeah.
That's not, I have no evidence, and nor do I. Talking to the people that are running Automatic and WordPress, I sense that they're very committed and very honest people.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm talking about how it comes across more than anything. Now, I just don't think Matt gets it, that because obviously Automatic gives a lot to WordPress, right? A lot of time, resources, and money. So he does. I just don't honestly feel that he gets it. That people think, well, Automatic's had almost $900 million invested in it over a number of rounds, and it's a private company. We don't know how profitable or unprofitable it is, how much of that investment it has in the bank or has burnt through.
Yeah.
And Matt, it's his company, it's a private company, but he also has total ownership and total control over the foundation as well.
Yeah.
And he also is a non-elected head of Automatic and of the foundation. And his argument about that, when he's been challenged about that, is it's open source, and if you don't like it, you can fork it and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which I feel, I understand you can say that, but I also feel it's slightly, I wouldn't say deep, he knows that it's that without the community, you can fork something as much as you like. It won't go anywhere. So that doesn't really work for me as an intellectual argument. What's your thoughts about that?
I've thought a lot about this, actually. I think probably said in private a lot of things about governance. I come from a nonprofit background, so for me, understanding the relationship between executive governance and day-to-day operations is something I know quite well. I think.
Can I ask you? Do you think fundamentally is there anything in what I've just said, or am I gone off on a?
Well, I think one thing we have to remember is Automatic doesn't owe us any information about how they're run or how things operate there. They're a private company, and that's great, and they're doing well, I assume. I don't know their financials, so but I think where we're at now is we're in a state of dependence, and there's a lot of WordPress companies that 100% of their revenue comes from WordPress, right? And WordPress is controlled by somebody that's not them. And the direction of the project, the direction of WordPress is not something that they can control. And so there's sweaty palms all around because, something could happen tomorrow and a decision could get made tomorrow that could have a really significant negative impact on their ability to earn, and they have no influence over or control over that, that reality. Here's a case in point. Matt goes on Twitter and he says something about somebody or an organization, and that has an immediate impact. And so
By
that's,
the way, you shouldn't, you can either do two things, but you shouldn't mix whiskey with Twitter, should you?
right. Well, hey, that's, but that's one individual, and so that's fine. But what I would say is, where a lot of nonprofit foundations or a lot of nonprofits go is executive boards or boards of directors hold the senior leader accountable for their actions. And so there's an accountability aspect to it where they actually have the ability to fire the senior leader if the values or there's something there that doesn't fit with the direction. And I think that's a helpful tool that boards have. And in classic nonprofits, usually those boards have elected members, and there's representation, and there's a membership component as well of some kind that people can buy into or get involved in. And so those pieces are all missing within the WordPress nonprofit ecosystem, and those are choices that were made, and that's fine, right? And I agree with Matt in the sense that he's accepted the optics of the setup that he's created, right? So he's okay with the appearance of conflict of interest or whatever you want to say by having Automatic and the foundation, whatever. And we, as people who are jumping into his playground or jumping into that playground, have to accept the risks associated with that. Us jumping in, making a ton of money, and then complaining about how things are run, we walked into it with both eyes wide open. So we have to understand that and accept that risk. I think we do have to have some conversations around succession. We do have to have a look at, what is the future of the WordPress foundation, the WordPress ecosystem, right? I think it would be interesting to see how do we get Matt into leadership conversations about the sustainability of the project as a whole, and out of conversations about the direction of the product specifically.
Yeah, I understand that some people have attempted to have these conversations with him and they've just been blanked off. I am surprised at that because I don't understand. In some ways, on the emotional level, I can understand it because he was the joint founder of it. He was the driver of it, the commercial driver. He formulated. He could see the possibilities. He started Automatic.
Yep.
When you've been emotionally and connected to something so intimately for so long, it's very hard to give up total control. It's just a human facet. I'm not saying I would be any different, but in some ways I'm surprised why it's so difficult, because if you really want something to continue, it must be, and he's a very intelligent individual. It's just the way it comes across. I just don't think it comes across that well by not sorting it out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we're all on our own journey, and whatever. I don't want to put thoughts on Matt and sort of where he's at, but as an outsider looking in, maybe there's some maybe there's a thought line there that no one's going to care as much about this project as I do. No one's going to see things the way I see it, and therefore,
isn't it? It's definitely that feeling about it, isn't it?
Yeah, and whether true or not, that's a conversation that he needs to own and go through himself and figure and he's the only one who can decide when he's ready to open that conversation up to other people to come in and have it
I
with
think,
him.
and this is, I think these thoughts and conversations have always been there,
Yeah.
but people have just put it on the back burner because they said they knew what they were getting involved with,
Yeah.
and the growth was there.
Yeah.
But I think one of the triggers, I think there's been two triggers, so there's more voices,
Yeah.
and they're putting their heads above the turret,
Yeah.
is Gutenberg
Mm.
and the pandemic.
Mm.
And in some way, I think they're mixed. I think the way Gutenberg was initially managed,
Yeah.
how long it's taken to get somewhere where it does seem you can really see the possibilities of it.
Yeah.
But also the pandemic, I'm not quite sure how the pandemic fits into this. I think because the WordCamp's not being there, there's been more oxygen for people to stick their head above the parrot. Is
Well,
that making any sense?
Yeah, no, I understand that. The pandemic forced us to stop relying on our ability to feel good about meeting each other, right? Like when we get together, there's an endorphin hit, absolutely, when we're connecting and we're talking. It's a love fest. It's all the warm fuzzies of being together and celebrating this community that we are a part of, and we love the relational aspect of it. So we've now, for a couple of years, we've removed that relational aspect, and what we've had to focus on is the project itself and the leadership and the direction and the decision making that's being done. And rather than having the ability to sit together like this and have conversations and talk about it and get different perspectives in the trust building atmosphere of proximity, like physical proximity, we end up in echo chambers where we're finding people who agree with our particular perspective, and so we're escalating those and elevating those conversations and those thoughts, and we're not getting other thoughts and perspectives brought in. So I think some of the pressure we're feeling of the pandemic is really around just all being stuck in echo chambers for a while, where our opinion and the only thing we're hearing is the thing that reinforces what we already thought we knew, or our opinions are what we thought we believed in. Whereas now that we're back to being able to meet and to do things, we can have conversations that allow other oxygen in, that allow other thoughts to come in, and maybe we'll get back to a bit more balance on it. But yeah, that would be my thought on why the pandemic matters.
I really followed. I think because I'm a joint citizen, American, but I was brought up in the English culture, so I'm naturally cynical. And I don't mean this in a disparaging way.
Right.
But I do think, I just sense through my psyche that the top echelon, the WordPress and Automatic, they partially rely on that fuzzy feeling to keep things under their, not exactly control, but not blowing up.
Yeah.
If you understand where I'm coming from.
Well, I think when you get to see behind the curtain, right? Like in The Wizard of Oz, when you get to see the professor actually what's going on behind the curtain, you realize the humanity of all of the individuals involved, and they're all. I don't think there's anybody really who's. I like to assume positive intent. So I'm going to say I don't think there's anybody maliciously trying to.
I don't think there's some. I think Chloe pointed out to me. She and I'm putting words in her mouth, but I think what she was trying to point out in my interview with her was she said, Jonathan, you've got to realise that we're running over 40% plus of the internet on this, and you don't realise how much there's involved in all this.
Yeah.
And how much, and we're really passionate. I'm passionate about this.
Yeah.
That she said that 3 times in the interview. I'm passionate, and the people that I work with on a daily basis, including Matt, are extremely passionate about it.
Yep, absolutely.
And you just don't understand, Jonathan, how complex all this is.
Imagine
And
the
I
pressure.
think I probably don't,
Yeah.
but I do have. I think I have the intellectual capacity to work out that it probably is extremely difficult.
What is it? What is the saying? Heavy is the head that wears the crown, or something like that, right? Like, I don't. I think that's a very, very right statement. That we just don't. We don't know the complexities. We get our view, right? Like our very isolated view. And I think there's very few people who probably see it at the level of Matt or at the level of Josefa. I think, again, as I said earlier about succession, be more inclusive of like who can we be bringing in to help share that load.
I think when it comes to Josefa, I interviewed her. She got married this week.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why she ain't here.
Congratulations, Josefa.
We had a very frank interview.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed with her.
Yeah.
But I don't know why, but I just don't feel it's a very good setup that she's the head of WordPress org, whatever it is, but she's paid by Automatic. I just don't. Part of me just doesn't find that acceptable. I don't know why. I'm not sure, but I've just been honest with you, James. I just don't find that acceptable.
I have a feeling that's probably more about finance and legal risk than it is about anything else, about where the money comes from for the foundation and how they've set it up. So I don't think the foundation can accept donations, right? So I think there's some.
Yeah.
I think there's probably some very reasonable and legitimate corporate reasons why she's paid by Automatic and not by that.
I'm more talking about my emotional.
Absolutely.
And the way.
Again, it's the optics. It's the
optics of it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's the optics. I just don't think it's very good optics.
No, and again, we as people in the community have to accept that as we get into it, that those optics are going to be there. We don't necessarily have to agree with it, right? And I don't think that I'm saying we have to just blindly follow. I think we can do our best to influence change by having conversations like this and say, hey, have we got alternative options that we can be exploring? You chose the best option for 10, 15 years ago. Again, same conversation. What's the best option for today? How much effort and energy and cost would it be to adjust it to something where those optics aren't an issue?
You laid out, just based on your experience, we've got another 5 minutes and then we need to wrap it up, but based on the experience, you put a framework to me that sounds perfectly acceptable. That you have Josefa, she has a committee. I'm fine with Matt being the chairman for life if he wants it. Because I would find it upsetting that he didn't have an ongoing role in it, because he is one of the joint founders. He's put a lot of effort. He didn't have to have it as a GPL. He could have done something and have none of it, the structure with it. So I wouldn't want him just to walk away from it. But I don't understand what the resistance, because Josefa seem have a committee, have a membership. They have to pay a certain amount to be a member. That money is utilised to pay for Josefa and some of the other. You could have people like Vicarage Web, or some of the other, if they want to sponsor specific tasks in it, be supporters of the foundation. Everybody would know a bit better where they stood.
Sure. And then you'd have different optics and conversations about, Liquid Web's only funding things that are in their best interest, and like, why can't they fund things for the good of the community?
Oh yeah, when all there's the arguments. Don't say that at all.
If there was one recommendation I could make to the leaders of the foundation and the leaders of Automatic is please put together a mentorship program and bring new people in and start training them now for taking on some of the load. There are a ton of people in the ecosystem who would love nothing more than to participate in that. And if you can find those that you trust who can bring some diversity and other views and voices into the mix, and mentor them and train them and show them what it's like to run an organization or to lead an organization that powers 40% of the web, I think that would be incredibly powerful. And you would gain a number of champions within the ecosystem who could go out and articulate the why for a lot of the things there that often sit unanswered. And that's really just about making it more sustainable from a balance point of view for the leadership. But I think also increasing opportunities for other voices to get involved.
I think that's fantastic. We're going to end the conversation now. James is a new friend. Classify you as a friend.
Sure, I'll accept that.
James is a new friend. He's been gracious to come on the show as well. And hopefully you'll come on some other Friday shows. You seem to get the Friday show as well.
I like them.
So, some people don't get the Friday. It's the New York Post of podcasting.
I felt like I was like a opinion person on CNN. You know, when they have like the multiple heads there, and then they shout out the problem of the day, and you get 4 different perspectives. I was like,
I don't know
okay.
if you're booked to come on the Thursday show, then the more serious show.
No, I haven't been booked on that one yet. Just the Friday.
I think we're booking for December now.
All right.
But you have to come on. That's the more serious discussion.
Okay.
That's the New York Times.
Oh, okay. I'll have to do lots of research and reading before I go. Okay, I get it.
We're going to wrap it up now, folks. We've got another interview, my last one, coming up in the next half hour. I hope you've enjoyed these. I think there's been some great discussions, actually. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.